So for those who may be unfamiliar, can you share what the difference is between formative and summative assessments, and why do we need to do both?
Yeah, absolutely. Formative assessments are typically more informal. I don't always record the results. I may, depending on what the goal is for that formative assessment. And then summative assessments are more formal and typically graded. And sometimes they may assess one lesson or multiple lessons. And we need both because formative assessments give us a quick snapshot of where your students are in their learning. And so that helps me to, and other teachers as well, to guide instruction as needed based on those results. Summative assessments allow you to see where students are usually in an entire unit, and they can see how much material was actually learned from that entire unit. And the results of these summative assessments can be helpful when you're preparing for those end of the year assessments. Because I like to look at their results from each of those I call them unit tests. And I look at, typically where were my kids' scores the lowest? And so that's usually where I'm going to start my review to prep them for that end of the year testing.
So can you give us a quick, just like examples of what a formative assessment is versus a summative?
Absolutely. I do whiteboards. If I want something very informal, I'll have my students, I'll put a problem on my board and I'll say, hey, I need y'all to answer this question, and they'll put it on their whiteboards and I'll tell them when to hold up their whiteboards. And that quickly lets me see, do most of my students understand what's going on or not? Another option that I've done is I've done paper exit tickets. And I do, usually I do 3 questions and I score them 1, 2, and 3, and then I will pile them in 1s, 2s, and 3s. And I may use that in a variety of reasons. However, I pair them just to kind of see at the end of the lesson where my kids are, or I may do it as exit or entrance ticket, depending on the purpose for that day.
What do you mean by 1, 2, and 3?
One is, so I do my exit tickets. I may do them differently than some people. Oh, I almost do what we call standards-based grading, like level 1, level 2, level 3, because that's what our assessments test on. You're either 1, 2, 3, or 4. So I do 1 is like a really basic, almost definition type question. They would call that a level 1 understanding. My second question would be more of a, can I solve this basic maybe equation, find the sum, find the difference? And then a level 3 would be more of an application type question on that same topic, if that makes sense.
Got it. Yes. Okay, I love that. Whiteboards, exit tickets. What do you do for summative assessments?
Summative assessments, I either do paper, depending on if we're doing a lot of graphing, I may prefer to do paper test, or I'd use Google Forms. I love Google Forms. There's so much data that I can collect from a Google form, and it can help me, like I said, for, if it's a quiz, I can say, all right, this is where they struggled before we take our unit test. This is what I need to look at. Or for end of the year testing, I can look at summative, the big unit test, and say, all right, this is where we were struggling. Let's make sure, that we address this again.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I actually forgot about Google Forms because I usually just do the paper tests, very kind of traditional. But yeah, Google Forms, it's a great idea. You started to talk about where we should start, because that is my next question. If we're brand new to this, where should we start? How do we go about looking at the information without feeling overwhelmed?
Okay, so